welcome everyone. We are here to look ahead at the season of Aries. This is, there is some big energy on its way in, people. I think it was maybe 2023 when I was skipping ahead one day, just having a look, like trying to look at the the end of the book, see what happens, read the last page, when I tripped across the upcoming massive stellium in Aries, and I was absolutely dumbfounded. Like, that seemed a lot. I didn't know very much about astrology, and I certainly didn't know that this was an unprecedented event at that point. But I eyeballed it a few years ago and thought, 2026, that's gonna be wild. And indeed, Aries is the season where all of this happens. So not only have we had the exceedingly rare Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees, 44 minutes, something like that, of Aries. Saturn-Neptune conjunction in and of itself is not that rare. Happens around about, I think, every 36 years or so. But to have both of them meeting at 0 degrees Aries, the very initiating point of the zodiac, I think you have to go back to about 4,500 BC to find that. So we have an exceedingly rare conjunction that has just happened on the 20th of May. And for approximately 5 or 6 days in April, running from about the 13th to the 19th or thereabouts, right? So it's 5, 6, 7 days, something like that. We have got Mercury, Neptune, Mars, Saturn, the Moon, the Sun, and Chiron, all in the sign of Aries. Now, if you don't think that this is a big deal, it's the Tower. I don't know. Maybe you've been hiding under a rock for a little bit, right? But let's just flip this around. I don't have any fancy astrology software. I'm too poor for that. But I wanted to show you what that actually looks like in reality. So we are looking at this part of the sky here, having this absolute cluster of planets. And so Mercury will be conjunct Neptune, which is conjunct Mars, which is conjunct Saturn, which is maybe a day or so earlier than this. This is the chart for the 16th of April. Maybe a day or so, well, actually a few hours earlier than this, this will be conjunct Saturn as well. And then we have Chiron and the Sun being conjunct over here. But obviously the Sun is moving through here, the Moon is moving through here. If I had fancy astrological software, I could show you how it tracks through. But I mean, this is fucking huge. We've got Jupiter over here in Cancer, now moving forwards, which is nice. We have Uranus at 29 degrees of Taurus. That feels like a big deal in and of itself anyway. And Venus down here, and then Pluto over here. Like there's so much going on in this part of the chart here. We don't have a roadmap for this. We don't know what this means. We don't know what this looks like. Astrology is nothing if not the study of patterns, right? When this thing's here and this thing is over here, this, generally speaking, is the thing that happens afterwards. That's what the body of astrology has taught us over thousands of years. There is nothing in the database. There is nothing in the ancient wisdom that tells us what this looks like for humanity. And that is why all astrologers, anybody who knows anything about astrology at all, is kind of frothing at the gills about this, because it's a really exciting time to be alive. Holy shit, we don't know what's going to happen with this. You know? It's not even like when, we say, oh, it's a fire horse year, right? So we can look back to 1966 and what happened there. And, each fire horse year before that, we're like, oh, we can expect, unpredictability and rebellions and military coups and all that sort of stuff. No. But what we do know is that all of these planets are in the house of the god of war. And there are quite a few ways in which that could pop off. At this point, I'm nowhere near arrogant enough to tell you that I know what that's going to look like. However, we are going to look ahead at the season. We're going to see what comes out here, what we need to know about this season. But I think just eyeballing that chart in and of itself should be enough for people to be girding their loins for what comes next, right? So let's shuffle these cards. That's 4, 3, 2, and 1. So, energies for Aries season. Queen of Wands, Aries card, for sure. We have the Hanged Man. That is pretty fucking interesting. And we have the Eight of Wands. I mean, would we really expect anything else? The Eight of Wands is a Sagittarius card, but, you know, if you've been with me for a while, you know, I talk about this in terms of acceleration, amplification. We're talking about things really gaining momentum. But if we're talking about them through an Aries lens, then we're talking about very sudden flaring happening. This Hanged Man, though, that's really interesting. What do we have at the bottom of the deck? We have the Nine of Cups. Now, this could be a statement of emotional regulation, a statement of the management of our emotions, or it could be a nudge that we need to make sure that we are really putting in the work for that, because we will need it for what comes next. Now, it's difficult to say either way, but let's get some clarifiers out from the Hexen 2. Let's give these a big shuffle, actually, because what's really interesting is that we have these cards of action: Queen of Wands, Eight of Wands, right? The first sign of fire and the final sign of fire, and then we've got this card of stasis, effectively in the middle. It depends how you read it, but I mean, we can read it as stasis. We can read it as absolute passivity, right? The Hangman is the most passive card in the tarot. Or we can talk about the fact that the Hanged Man represents surrender and sacrifice, and or the flipping of oneself upside down to see things from a different perspective. Now, I do think that 2026 is a year that is full of extraordinary opportunity, and I want to really lay that down. I've been talking about this a lot. I've been talking about this for a fucking year at least, anyway, very seriously about this period. But only if we are prepared to really lean into where the opportunities are, right? And if you are focused on what is falling down, if you are panic-stricken about what is falling down, rather than looking for the opportunities that exist in between, right? We're looking at the spaces in between things happening rather than the things themselves, then you will miss the opportunity to make this the most extraordinary year of your life. I think, personally, in my experience anyway. So let's get some clarifiers here. 4, 3, 2, and 1. So we have the Ten of Pentacles and the Knight of Pentacles. We have the World card, and we have the Chariot. We have the Three of Cups. We have the King of Wands, completing then the fire sign triplicity. Eight of Swords at the bottom of the deck, though, and he is. I think this is the thing that makes a lot of difference. So the shadow cards at the bottom of the deck are talking about, you know, a feeling of being stuck, of being trapped, right? But this being something that is existing in the mind rather than reflected in reality. I love the Eight of Swords because it has the problem, the assessment of the problem, but also the solution contained within it. And it's right here in the card. It's not the problem, it's the way that you're thinking about the problem that is the problem, right? And if we can take that as our basis, then it would explain why the Hanged Man is showing up here, because we need to look at things from a different perspective. And then we have Aries, Leo and Sagittarius, both or all three being represented in their various ways as operating energies here. Like I said, I think maybe taking this season as like looking at the spaces in between things being really, really strong. Because this year will reward action, right? But conscious action, deliberate action, not emotional escalation or emotional kickback or projection or so I'm smirking because I'm thinking about some of the comments that I've received recently from people who well, yeah, anyway, not even sure they're not bots, to be honest, but there we go. You know, the Chariot card here, strong, King of Wands strong, Eight of Wands strong, Queen of Wands strong. These are all saying, if you are prepared to check your thinking, if you are prepared to, as we always say with the Eight of Swords, right, go back and check your base assumptions. What have you missed? Because you've definitely missed something, and it's led you into this mental cul-de-sac now that is saying, like, oh, I'm stuck, I'm trapped, I can't do a thing. We go back and we test those, interrogate all the assumptions, look for the spaces in between. There are opportunities that are showing up everywhere to do something differently, to experience something differently. You know, the world card being here, I mean, this was actually the first card that I ever saw out of this deck here. And I thought it was extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. And I hope very, very strongly that what is indicated by the imagery on this card is not something that we see come to fruition during Aries season. But the world is a card of completion. And I think what is really striking above everything else is that, let's pull this back up again. I heard Adam Ellenbast describe 0 degrees Aries as the axe. The axe that falls, that chops, that severs, that takes us away from the old, right? Every single one of these has gone over the 0 degrees Aries by this point, and they are all talking to each other, you know. There's a conversation going on here, and the conversation, the outcome of the conversation is the world changes this season. It's never going to be the same. I think a lot of people recognise that we don't live in the same world, that with the same perception of the world that we had back in 2019. I think the world is different now. The world has changed. I think it's one of the things that's led to a kind of surreality of existence, right? In that intervening 6 years. But here's the point, I think, where it becomes so obvious that it cannot be denied, that everything is different now. And what that brings with it, I don't know. Certainly it brings advancement and progression of something. And perhaps those things are things that we might rally against, perhaps. Or some of them we might be very much for. You know, the World card is the end of a cycle. The Ten of Pentacles, in its own way, is the end of a cycle. To some extent, we might consider the Hanged Man as a representation of the end of a cycle, because once you see something, you can't unsee it. You know, once your perspective has changed, you can't go back to how it was before. It's like the dude from the Matrix who goes to see the Merovingian and says, like, oh, put me back in the Matrix. Like, I want to be rich and I want to eat steak all the time. Like, realistically, we may yearn for that sort of thing, but it's not possible. Once we see things differently, it changes the makeup of our brain. And reality, by extension, also shifts, because your consciousness creates reality, right? So we have the underlined importance of checking our own belief structures over and over and over again during this season. The Eight of Swords tells us that. And particularly in any kind of situation where we feel stuck or stricken or powerless. I mean, sometimes the Eight of Swords is a card of of wanting to be saved. You know, in the standard depiction in the Waite Smith, right, where we see a woman who is bound and she's got a blindfold over her eyes and she's surrounded by swords and she appears to be on a beach, right? But when you really examine that card, what you see is that she is not bound tightly. She's standing there stock still, perhaps in, you know, in freeze mode, because she doesn't think she can do anything. But she's not bound tightly, so if she wriggled a little bit, she could get her hands free. Let me see if I can pull the card up so I can show you exactly what I mean. Oh, wow, that never happens. She was literally underneath there. I've been bemoaning that a lot recently, that it's always the last card in the deck. Anyway, there she is. She's not bound tightly. She could actually get her hands free. If she could get her hands free, she could remove the blindfold, and then she could have a look around and actually assess how much danger she is in. Because there's water around, yes, and she does appear to be on a beach, but the tide isn't coming in rapidly. She's not being buffeted by waves, and she could navigate herself to this place of safety that we see up here on the hillside. You know, a lot about this card is about learned helplessness or looking for someone to save you. And I mean, I think a lot of people in the last 6 years have put their faith in other people to save them. Right? We've seen the rise of false prophets. We've seen the rise of people with messianic complexes in all sorts of places, right? And everybody's been sort of scouting around, or at least a lot of people have been scouting around going, that person will save us. We just need to follow them. I mean, the line was always, don't fucking follow. God helps those who help themselves and all that sort of thing, right? But check the thought processes, check the framework, check whether you can wriggle your hands free, because I think that ultimately is going to be one of the most valuable things this season. Additionally, the 9 of Cups, the need for emotional regulation. I've been banging this fucking drum for well over a year now. Can we make emotional regulation cool again? I really fucking mean that. I mean, if you cannot handle your emotions, if you cannot handle being alive without having violent outbursts of rage about all sorts of things, like, you're not going to find this season particularly comfortable. You know, talking about the need to recalibrate, well, I don't know about you, but I've been doing it fucking hourly, I think, for the last couple of months anyway. The energies are very, very intense, and don't think for a second that this isn't going to feel like probably one of the most intense periods of your life. You know, Aries, and the one blessing about all of this, I would say, is that things that happen in Aries don't tend to be sustained, right? If you know any Aries people or people with an Aries moon or something like that, flare up aggressively really, really quickly. But it will subside very quickly too. You know, they come down again. If it was, I don't know, Scorpio or something like that, we might be in for some issues, because they are in there for the long term, and that is sustained and whatnot. And not so with Aries, but at the same time, that's a lot of fire, a lot of cardinal fire energy for a lot of people to deal with, and it is the result of the flare, the way that people react to the flare up of that energy, that concerns me the most, that may cause the longer term problems, consequences. Right? Aries is not particularly a sign that it considers consequences of things. But aside from anything else, it's the very first sign of the zodiac. It is this reset period that we've been talking about for quite a long time. Now, emotional regulation is going to be critical to that. It's going to be absolutely key. You know, to some extent, perhaps the Hanged Man is a request, such as I made in the How to Thrive Through 2026 video, of self-restraint, voluntary self-restraint, as we would see in the case of the Hanged Man, because he's voluntarily turning himself upside down to vibe in that place of discomfort, to make sure that he can see things from a different perspective, right? It could be that, speak less than you feel, check your feelings. Just because you feel it doesn't necessarily mean it's valid, right? All of these things here that we were talking about, all of the warnings that we got from reactions in 2020. I said right at the beginning of that video that history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. Was that Mark Twain? Somebody said that. There is a lot about 2026 that feels very similar to 2020. And if we learned anything then, it's how to show up here in this far more intense period much more wisely, right? So Queen of Wands, Eight of Wands. We can expect this to get big, get hot very, very quickly, for, I think, situations to overtake our understanding very, very quickly. And then as soon as it's up there, it's over, and we've got the aftermath. I said a lot that Mars is really active this year, right? It's not just about this big pile up in Aries. Actually, Mars is going around and making all sorts of configurations with all of the planets this year. He's marching around and doing all sorts of shit. Which means that this isn't an energy that just goes away, right? It's going to keep getting revisited, I feel, over and over again. The Ten of Pentacles and the Knave, sorry, so that's not the Knight, it's the Page. Page of Pentacles here is quite interesting because everything in the tarot working cycles upon cycles, right? There's lots of different cycles that you can look at. One of them would be the Ace to the 10, the other one would be the Knave or the Page to the King. Or you could go from the Ace to the King, right? Or you could just simply go through the decans, go from 2 to 10, right? There are lots of different ways of interpreting this. The Ten of Pentacles is what is solid, what is stable. Sometimes we talk about it in terms of inheritance, or we talk about it in terms of generational trauma, generational karma, all these kind of things, right? But what is really solid about the Ten of Pentacles is the fact that it's taken a long time to build, but it has now reached its state of completion. And the one thing that we can understand is that everything changes. Aries isn't afraid of everything changing. It actually encourages it. It wants the new things. It wants the new experiences, right? But this feels like what is ending seems almost like it's accompanied with a general consensus that it needs to end. Now, take this as you will. I mean, I'm trying to do big picture here, but this is quite it's quite a busy period, quite a lot going on. Page of Pentacles for me is always about innate value of something and the discovery of value of something, right? It has a quality of initiation like the aces do, but it's nowhere near as powerful as the ace. It's usually about scaffolding some understanding of value onto an understanding of value that we already have, and it's showing up here with the Ten of Pentacles. So there is an understanding of the value of the Ten of Pentacles, but it feels a little bit like you don't know what you've lost to, you don't know what you've got until it's gone feeling about it here. You didn't realize how stable things were until they stopped being stable, for example, right? I was listening this morning to a podcast talking about a company who was cyber attacked in the last couple of days, and they went in and essentially just deleted the entire fucking company, all records that they had, all inventory records, the whole database of everything, not just on the first level of computers, but down to the core servers and everything, just gone. Telling people not to come into work. because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They can't tell them what they're supposed to be doing. And it raises some interesting questions. If it is possible, and this company was a big company and it had its own cyber security division and everything, if an entire company can be essentially axed like that, then there is the potential for that to be a more widespread occurrence during this time. And imagine that it was not, I think it was a pharmaceutical company. Imagine that it's not a pharmaceutical company, but instead social security department or a bank or something like that. To just delete, not hold to ransom or anything, but just delete everything. Can you imagine the level of chaos that would happen if that became part of the energy of this month? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. You don't know how stable and predictable life was until it wasn't like that anymore. This is what I'm reading here off these two cards. It's really interesting. And it's very much predicated around the idea of the Ten of Pentacles being the end, right? And here's this Page of Pentacles recognizing the value. What do we have here? Nine of Pentacles. In their own way, both of these cards, they represent something similar. They talk about very different things, but let's look at the ways in which they're similar. Both these figures have one foot in the water and one foot on the ground, right? We're talking about stable. Well, we're talking about stability, right? Particularly in the Temperance card, we talk about equilibrium. We talk about balance. We talk about, that state of things being aligned right there. And we don't see that quite in the same way in the Star, and yet we do have that same symbolism. Now, the Star is technology. The Star is, all things that are a little futuristic that are sitting on the horizon. The Temperance card is sort of balancing out the issues that have been caused around perhaps even personal. The ability to be personally independent, materially speaking. So like your stuff, your money, whatever. And something new being brought in. Now I'm using very careful language here because fucking YouTube is censorious as shit. But I hope that you're picking up what I'm putting down, particularly given what I was just saying a minute ago. Because there has to be a point where all of these structures that have been put in place, not yet fully operating, but certainly put in place, become operational. There has to come a point where the drawstring neck of the bag is closed, right? And I do wonder if this period during Aries season is the recognition of now how closed the bag is and how tight the string has been tied. Because things really start to pick up a pace here. They really start to pick up a pace, and particularly in terms of the more futuristic ways in which we are interacting with governing bodies. It's really interesting that this Star is she's depicted as naked, right? There's a vulnerability that we always talk about with the Star that certainly comes from the fact that she is butt naked, right? There's nothing being hidden here. And given the way that the technocratic governing structures seem to want to lay everyone bare so that nothing can be hidden, I wonder if this is where this is going. Nine of Cups. Ace of Swords at the bottom of the back deck, and the Six of Swords representing a going back to something. Let's have a little look here. Let's get out the Deviant Moon. Why is the Nine of Cups here, please? Whoa. Okay, you wanted to come out. Queen of Pentacles, Two of Swords, Ten of Pentacles again. I know exactly what I want to say about this. And I probably will get struck down by YouTube if I say it. Anyway, if you've ever read the book The Grand Chessboard by Brzezinski, I think it's Brzezinski, you'll understand what this Ten of Pentacles is about all here. Two of Swords is a fascinating depiction in the Deviant Moon. You look at all the division in the world at the moment, and it effectively has got the quality of this, like we're all at each other's throats over differences so hard that we cannot see how we are the same. Queen of Pentacles represents Capricorn. Has a Saturnian quality to it. There are things coming up in Aries season that may not be repeating, but they are certainly rhyming. And I think the difference is that we're not then in this for, 2 or 3 years and then it sort of fades out and we pretend that it didn't fucking happen, which, seems to be how some people are trying to cope with what happened then. It is the new reality now from this point onwards. Ace of Swords. It's epiphanies, it's new ideas, it's all sorts of cool things, but it is also the emergence of the truth. The world is not going to be the same way on the other side of this season, by the completion of this season, as it was going into it. Now, I don't know if that's going to involve the revelation of information that perhaps we didn't know before. Maybe 50-50, possible. Yeah, that is. But it certainly begins to rocket forwards. We've got the Queen of Swords showing up on a side, and the Four of Wands showing up on its side as well, which is really interesting because the Queen of Swords is about helping us understand things, right? So if there were being information released, then we would hope that the Queen of Swords would be in the upright. Like, not only is this information being revealed, released, and we can make sense of it, we understand what the consequences of that are. But the Queen of Swords is showing up on her side. There is an awareness of facts. There isn't really an understanding of it. If she was in the reverse, then this could be a time of complete flummox, right? Nobody knows what the fuck is going on. But it's not that. It's that we've kind of got half a sense, but we can't make sense of it. And there is, whilst there is a realization that what has ended has really well and truly ended, there's a confusion around, and maybe that's what this is here, there's a confusion around what it will look like moving forwards. And maybe part of that is because we don't know how long it will last, right? Not really knowing that it's just going to be a thing that carries on forever now. The Chariot card is kind of picking up the baton and running really fucking fast with it, which is, like I said, it's going to feel like events are overtaking us and suddenly we're like, hang on, no, that's not right. How can this possibly work like this? And that's not going to be enough to stop the train. We're not going to be able to hold it at the station. Knight of Wands is also on his side as well, which feels a little bit chaotic, to be honest. But then we've got the Emperor showing up here. This is order emerging, but I don't think it's an order that we like. Now, remember what I said right at the beginning. It's essential for us to be looking at the spaces in between things. We are not going to hold on to what is gone, because the indications are that that will be done, right? There's no resurrecting what has gone. There's no resurrecting that stability, that security, even that predictability and linearity of, even at this point in 2026, of how that has worked, right? We talked a lot about chaos and, you know, increasing prices and you know, supply chain interruptions and you know, and all sorts of other social stuff, like everything feeling very, very chaotic at the moment. But there's still an underpinning structure that we are all more or less you know, adhering to at the moment. So, you know, kids go to school, people go to work. You go to the shop and you buy your food, and you know, bitch about how much it costs, but you know, you bring the food home again. You go to the ATM, you get your money out, so on and so forth. Something about that's disappearing, and while we're still trying to work out what it is, a new order is emerging. We don't fucking like it very much at all. Which is why it is essential to be pretty nimble with yourself, not only from an emotional point of view, but also in terms of how you are thinking about everything point of view too. Remember, it's not the problem, it's the way that you're thinking about the problem. I feel like there are, and we might see it shortly, there are going to be decisions that we need to make individually. And the emphasis is very much on the individually moving forwards, about how much we are going to participate with this new order that is emerging, and how much we are going to, you know, abjectly reject it. I just be like, no, not doing that, not playing that game, not doing this, not doing that. Tell me about this Chariot, please. Seven of Pentacles. Yeah, so here's right, there's the King of Swords, right? I knew he was going to come out at some point. Decision making process. We have the Seven of Pentacles on its side. We have the High Priestess on her side as well, which feels messy. It feels really, really messy, because here's a problem, and we're not really sure what we're supposed to do about it. But notice that it's on its side, and this is interesting, because here's a problem and we don't know what to do about it. Here we've arrived at the solution, and we kind of got a clearer sense of how we're going to move forwards. This one's that we're not even sure that we understand what the problem is. We're certainly not sure how we're going to move forward, but maybe we don't like the solutions that we've been offered. I feel like that could be, you know, strong on that front there. King of Swords on its side feels almost like we don't really have a choice, or we're made to feel like we don't really have a choice about what we are to do. And then the High Priestess is on her side here, and she just cannot be a conduit during this time of higher wisdom, like, to some extent. And maybe there's a huge consciousness upgrade that is happening during this point to some extent, like the higher guidance tap is turned off during this time. And what we've got is exactly what I've been fucking saying for months. My old coach said, you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to your level of training. What is the standard of training that you have been through recently? For the last year, the last 2 years, the last 3 years, definitely the last 6 years. Have you actually at any point challenged your own assumptions about things? Have you challenged your own belief systems? Have you worked on your own emotional regulation? Or are these all alien concepts to you? Because at the point where higher self goes temporarily offline while everything's very chaotic and everything's like, what you have to rely on is the extent of your training. Who is that? You are what you do repeatedly. Shit, I can't even remember who that was. Feel like part of me thinks it might be Sun Tzu, but then somebody else in here is saying, no, maybe it's Plato or Aristotle. I can't fucking remember, right? But the point is, this feels hamstrung. This energy feels like us being hamstrung in terms of the decisions that we get to make for ourselves and how those are informed by higher selves and whatnot. And yet the chariot's still here. The chariot is still rocketing forwards. Do you understand? Everything when it comes to how we process this information, how we understand what is going on, how we show up for it, we consent for it, we work it through in our heads, these are all sideways. And yet the order is still emerging. I don't like that, personally. I will certainly be looking for the gaps in between all things. Now, when we come over here to the Eight of Wands, we've got the Three of Cups and we've got the King of Wands. And I really do feel like this is the strong push for people. I've been talking about this for 6 fucking years. I remember talking about this in 2020 extensively. You need people. People need you. We're talking about interdependence of people. Sufficient that whatever begins to escalate during this time, whatever begins to increase in its momentum and definitely in its speed here, can be somewhat countered by those interdependent relationships that we have created with other people, right? The King of Wands is very much about what we actively do. It's about putting your money where your mouth is from an energetic point of view. It's, you know, this is a really big time. You've never been through anything like this. I've never been through anything like this. But the indicators, the wisdom, the nudges, the intuition, they've been for years pointing to very specific facts. People need people. We need to stop fucking fighting with each other over arbitrary differences that really distract us from what is actually going on. The Three of Cups is emotional support networks. Judgment card. Yeah, fucking yes. Yeah, we all need to stop fighting with each other, right? You need to put the politics down and understand that what has been passing for politics, maybe forever actually, is just another variety of bread and circuses. It's just another version of trying to make you think, or, you know, issue the illusion that you are actually participating in a democratic system. This is incorrect. This is not true. You cannot vote your way out of tyranny. You cannot depose by voting a dictator. And if we continue to fight along fairly arbitrarily drawn lines of division, we make ourselves very controllable, exceedingly controllable, in fact, as we have been forever. Like this here, people, I'm going to say it again, is fucking unprecedented. That has never happened before, much less on, you know, trailing very closely on the heels, the blink of an eye in astrological terms, on the back of an exceedingly rare conjunction, which is Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. Do not underestimate just how important this time is. It's hugely important. And while you're kicking off, because somebody on the other side stands for something that you don't think is a good idea, you're all missing the humanity in each other. You are all missing the fact that you're hurting yourselves. You're hurting yourselves. Now, this year is all very individual. It's the nature of fire. It's highly individualistic. It's not a year for collective action, right? It's about us embodying higher principles of things. And to some extent, right, these two cards say it down here, you got to put down your fucking swords with each other. You really do need to put down your swords, because there is a spiritual war that has been going on for a long time, right? I clocked onto it 1st of January 2020. I fucking talked about it at the time. I was like, something really big is going on. In reality, it's probably been going on much longer than that. But it's been fucking overt since 2020. And the only way that the way that nobody sees it is by fighting with your neighbour, fighting with your fellow man, fighting with your fellow whoever. Like, we are going to fucking need each other moving forwards. Because the governing structures in all countries and supranationally as well have become bloated and huge and whatever, and, you know, dictatorial, tyrannical, all those sorts of things. But it's more than that. There's more sitting above that, and this is a spiritual war. Now, whether you believe, you know, people are farming your negative energy and you know, eating it, which is at this point possible, entirely possible. Or whether you recognise that a lot of the crises of right now, what you and I and other people around us consider to be crises, is largely fucking manufactured. Certainly in terms of perception, if not reality. We are not going to work together. Now, my biggest concern about this time, and I have to say that this reading is not exactly allaying that concern, is that something goes too fucking far during this season. I did an Energies of the Week reading last week, as I do every week for people on Circle, right? And I actually had one of these charts up, and I was showing them, and I was like, you know, looks like Pluto's over here just minding his fucking business, right? It's not really doing anything. It's not fucking true, though. Uranus and Pluto are talking. They're talking a lot, right? We might not be able to quite see it, quite perceive it, but they are talking backwards and forwards, and they're going to rocket things forwards, particularly technologically. And you want to talk about, you know, the creation of the digital panopticon, like these two definitely have got something to do with that. But look at the conversation that's going on here, and look at the conversation that's going on here. Do you realise how fucking supercharged this is? We've got Jupiter over here, but he's squaring this clusterfuck in Aries over here. He's creating tension. But there is a harmonious conversation going on this way. Now, you can either continue fighting arbitrarily, you can continue shitting on other people's points of view. I've had a few of those comments recently, and I'm like, you're proving my fucking point. You can continue to believe that somebody who holds a different view from you is evil, or you can recognise that you are fucking one, and what's the word that I'm looking for? The instigators of this spiritual warfare have put a sword in each of your hands and told you that the other one has fucking kicked your puppy. Alright, and now it's swords at dawn, right, left and centre, everywhere. That Judgment card on its side actually feels like the most positive way that it could show up. It's really interesting, I've just noticed on the Hexen too there. It's the astrolabe, but it's the Persian astrolabe from 1208. Now, Judgment is about decision making, right? It's about life-changing decisions. Here, it potentializes this. it introduces the potential for you to make life-changing decisions around emotional support, around dropping the conflict, those sorts of things. But it also potentializes, quite literally, Judgment Day. And I don't think any of us fucking want that at all, right? So we get to fucking choose, is the point. Now, I'm not saying that widespread emotional disarmament necessarily is the only way that we get through this, because there are some people who are absolutely bent on doing you harm. There's no other way of putting it, right? Yeah. And so we have to maintain a vigilance about that. But it's about coming together with other people and really starting to formulate, and not just formulate, to action plans about what you're going to do together. King of Wands is all about collective action. It's all about what you do. The King of Wands is the active expression of everything that has come before in the entire wand suit, right through the wand hierarchy. Right? The Queen of Wands is working out the motivation, the drive. Right? Why do we do the fucking thing? What are we trying to get out of it? She is the initiator, right? As women usually are, the initiator, and then the man does the thing, right? Don't come at me. There are scientific studies, psychological studies that show that to be the case, right? The King of Wands here is like, we need to do something now, and we need to do something together. We need to stop fighting. We need to choose to work together. Because I don't think that there's any point where it's like, well, fuck that, that's it, we're done. I don't think that point exists. But the sooner that we can start coming together and working together, and, I don't know what that means exactly. It's going to depend very much on the consequences that start coming up. But I would certainly be paying attention to your food supply and your energies and the things that you need, making sure that you have them. This is not a fucking controversial thing to say at the beginning of March 2026 when you look at what's going on out in the world. And think about the interdependability between you and other people. Barter systems, Touche. This is the Three of Pentacles. How do you work together? Maybe Bob at number 34 has got, crap soil, but he can grow potatoes. Now, he's happy to grow potatoes. And he'll grow an entire fucking thing of potatoes, but he needs some lettuce from, I don't know, Shirley from number fucking 67, and maybe Betty or Doris from, 34 and 21 respectively. They grow fucking, I don't know, tomatoes and peppers and things like this. I mean, I'm talking about this kind of thing. I'm talking about community, getting back to kind of looking after each other. It's almost absent as a fucking concept in the West. We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do it anymore. How many of you know the names of your fucking neighbours? So I lived for 2.5 years in the last place that I lived in the UK, and one neighbour, Pam. Hi, Pam. I didn't know anybody else. I didn't speak to anybody else. They didn't speak to me. I knew more people that lived in my village in Bulgaria before I fucking moved here than I knew where I actually lived. Now, if you don't think that these two things are connected, you're mistaken. So it's like a deliberate division, deliberate demoralization. When I'm talking about the opportunities, the spaces in between the things, this is what I'm talking about. Oh, I'll be honest, I had absolutely no fucking idea how this reading was going to turn out. None. Temperance card is at the bottom of the deck. Balance, equilibrium, mitigation, perhaps. But now it's out here, like, here's what it is. And no doubt some people are going to fucking shit on the message of this as well. And do you know what? Like, you're probably bots. So at this point, I don't really care. Things are going to get very fucking real during this season. Very real. And I think it is better to start putting your money where your mouth is. Start actively doing something to circumvent what could be coming down the pike. A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks early. Way, way better than 1 second too late. Right? I feel like that's a message that Aries would absolutely fucking get behind. We don't want to be reactive. We want to be responsive. Like, I'm going to link the 2026 video up here somewhere if you haven't seen it. Watch it. If you wouldn't mind. Ako običite. Because I do think everything about that period, this period that we're talking about, and particularly that point there, is pushing us towards extraordinary reactivity. And it is what people do, humans do, when they are under load. And they act in unpredictable, they actually rather predictably act in a number of ways, but they do things that are not logical, not rational, not reasonable. And they do everything from this emotionally reactive place, and I would like to avoid as many people as possible doing that. Focus on the things that matter. Start developing all of this, if you haven't already, and you probably have. A lot of you have. It's an extraordinary time to be alive. It's a very interesting time to be alive. So I'm going to leave it here. I've ranted for long enough, I think. Seriously. For the spaces in between. That's where the opportunities are. That's where the real gold is. Don't buy into don't buy into the propaganda. Like that's the long and short of it. Don't buy into it. So, know that I love you all very, very much. I'll see you soon.